Some people don't grow up because they want to. They grow up because they had no other choice. You can see it in the way they sit, shoulders slightly heavier than everyone else's, carrying weight invisible to most. You can hear it in the pauses between their sentences, like they're choosing every word carefully, avoiding unnecessary conflict that once cost them. And you can feel it in their presence. Calm, quiet, self-contained, mature beyond what their birth certificate suggests they should be. These are the people who feel older than the number written on their ID, the ones who felt 40 at 20. Adults long before the world called them one. But this isn't about genetics or personality, or some poetic social media trope. This is psychological aging, the invisible process where trauma, responsibility, survival force someone to mature faster than their peers should have to. Today, we're going to break this down slowly, deeply, with the care it deserves, not just the symptoms observed, but the causes, the behaviors, the wounds, the strengths, the lonely reality of living in a world that sees you responsible, yet never asks who carried you when you were still supposed to be carried by someone else. Anyone else. Really, let's begin with a truth most people miss. These individuals started life with one devastating reality sinking in too early. They had to grow up early. Way too early. Psychologists call this parentification, a term that sounds clinical but hides pain. When a child becomes the emotional or practical caretaker of the adults around them, something breaks inside that never fully heals. This can take two forms, both equally damaging. First, emotional parentification, where the child becomes the therapist, the listener always available, the stabilizer when everything falls apart, the emotional shock absorber for everyone's chaos except their own, which gets buried deep. These are the kids who sat beside their mother as she cried, who listened to their father's frustrations like a counselor would, who learned to read the emotional temperature of a room in seconds. They weren't allowed innocence. Not really, not ever. They became the emotional adult because the real adults weren't second. Practical parentification, where the child becomes responsible for day-to-day survival. Cooking meals nobody taught them to make, cleaning endlessly, taking care of siblings who should have been their playmates, not their charges. Running the household not because they wanted to, but because someone had to, or everything would collapse into worse chaos. And so a child develops adult muscles, mentally, emotionally, sometimes even socially, lifting weights meant for someone twice their size. Carl Jung called this forced individuation, a process where growth happens not through exploration, curiosity, or joy like it should, but through necessity, through survival, through no other choice existing in their reality, so they adapt or break completely, and breaking wasn't allowed. But here's the hidden cost nobody talks about. When you grow up too fast, a part of you never gets to grow. People who feel older than their age carry a specific psychological burden. They believe everything is their responsibility, even when it clearly isn't, especially when it isn't. This creates a personality that looks mature on the outside, impressive even, but exhausted on the inside. These are the people who apologize for problems they didn't cause, who say, "I am fine," because they don't want to inconvenience anyone, who feel guilty resting, who overthink every decision, who hold themselves to standards no one else asked of them, impossible standards, who feel like the world might collapse if they stop holding it up for even 1 second, even one breath, one moment. Hyper-responsibility is not an adult trait, though society treats it as one. It is a trauma response, plain and simple. A child who had to figure everything out alone eventually becomes an adult who assumes everything is their job to fix. Psychologists refer to this as internalized caretaker identity. It is why these individuals often feel decades older than they actually are, because mentally, emotionally, they've been on call since childhood, always alert, always ready, always responsible for everyone but themselves, somehow. But here's the quiet tragedy nobody mentions. Hyper-responsible people are rarely recognized for the burden they carry every single day. Instead, they're labeled mature for their age, wise beyond their years, reliable, stable, the strong one everyone depends on constantly. Nobody ever stops to ask at what cost, what price did they pay? What childhood did they lose forever? Most people remember something about their youth that felt light, easy, playful, free from consequence, or weight, or responsibility. Not these people. They don't relate to meaningless drama, teenage recklessness, carefree rebellion, impulsive decisions. Others reminisce about fondly. It is not that they avoided these things. They simply never had the psychological space for them, never had that luxury. When other kids were breaking rules, they were keeping the peace. When other kids were learning through mistakes, they were avoiding them. When other kids were exploring identity, They were managing their family's instability. Carl Rogers would call this conditional selfhood, identity forming around survival. People who feel older than their age often say things like this: "I never really had a childhood, not a real one. I felt like the adult even when I was a kid. I don't know how to be carefree, it feels wrong. I was always the one holding things together." They didn't grow up normally. They aged prematurely, and it shows in everything. Emotional aging is different from chronological aging. A 20-year-old can carry the emotional density of someone in their 40s or beyond. If they've experienced chronic stress, emotional neglect, instability, unpredictable environments, early responsibility, caretaker roles forced upon them, or trauma never processed. You see it in their eyes, that subtle tiredness, that quiet understanding of things most people their age don't know exist. You hear it in their voice, measured, calm, rarely impulsive, always thinking 3 steps ahead, protecting themselves from more hurt. You feel it in their energy, a grounded presence that comes from surviving more than they should have had to survive. This phenomenon is sometimes called psychological acceleration. Stress matures the brain faster. Trauma sharpens perception beyond what is natural for development. Responsibility builds adult-like awareness. Emotional abandonment creates self-sufficiency earlier than it should, earlier than nature intended for a child's timeline. This is not wisdom, not the kind gained through reflection. This is survival shaped into personality, hardened into identity over time. It feels like maturity to others, but it came from pain, from necessity, from having no other option but to adapt. People who feel older than their age often have a worldview that is realistic, skeptical, slightly cynical even, deeply observant, emotionally cautious. Not because they dislike life or people, but because they've been exposed to the darker sides of it sooner. They understand people's hidden motives, emotional manipulation, instability, fragility, impermanence, consequences that others ignore or don't see coming at all. They don't romanticize life like their peers do. They analyze it. This creates a level of emotional intelligence others misinterpret as pessimism. But it is not pessimism, not really. It is pattern recognition. They've seen enough to know better, to know what happens next. One of the most painful realities of people who feel older than their age is this: they struggle to connect with peers. They are not interested in superficial friendships, shallow conversations, meaningless drama, performative behavior, trends, temporary relationships that mean nothing deep. They crave depth instead. Honesty, emotional safety, maturity, consistency, stability, things that feel rare in a world obsessed with surface appearance. This often leads to isolation, not because they want to be alone, but because they don't feel understood by people around them. This is why many individuals with older souls gravitate toward older friends, mentors, people with more life experience to share wisdom, solitude, introspective hobbies, deep thinkers who ask questions others avoid. This isn't pretentiousness, like some assume it is compatibility. Their emotional world is simply built differently. Their foundations were poured in chaos, not the stable ground others took for granted. When you carry adult responsibility as a child, your nervous system learns to stay alert all the time, forever vigilant. Even in adulthood, these people often live in a state of emotional fatigue, burnout, overthinking, muscle tension that never fully releases, sleep irregularities, anxiety, hypervigilance that scans every room for danger. Their minds don't rest easily, not even in safe spaces. Their bodies don't relax naturally. Their hearts don't trust quickly. It is not aging, not in the biological sense. It is the aftermath. Their exhaustion is not laziness. It is accumulated emotional weight carried for years, decades, lifetimes compressed into 2 short childhoods never recovered from. People who feel older than their age often became the strong one because the alternative would have created chaos nobody wanted. They learned early if they fall apart, everything collapses. If they need help, no one will show up, not really. If they show vulnerability, they get ignored or punished. If they depend on others, they will be disappointed, abandoned, hurt again. If they don't hold things together, someone else will fall apart. Strength became their armor against the world's cruelty and indifference. Maturity became their mask. Independence became their identity. But here's the quiet truth: they rarely admit to anyone, even themselves sometimes. They're tired, they're lonely, they're overwhelmed, and they wish just once someone would take care of them, truly care for them. But they don't ask because asking feels dangerous. Asking feels like weakness. Asking feels like it will lead to more disappointment. As adults, these individuals appear incredibly mature, grounded, capable, but internally, they feel much older than they actually are, disconnected from youthful experiences, misunderstood, strangely out of place, tired of people's immaturity. uninterested in drama or chaos around them, more comfortable with solitude, prematurely serious about everything. They might excel in leadership, emotional understanding, crisis management under pressure, empathy, problem solving, self-awareness, resilience, but they struggle with romance, vulnerability, asking for help when they need it desperately, trusting others, relaxation, playfulness, spontaneity, receiving care. Their maturity is real, but it is heavy, heavier than most people will understand. People who feel older than their age are not born that way. They are shaped by trauma, instability, neglect nobody noticed, emotional neglect, hyper-responsibility, early independence, survival roles, accelerated maturity forced upon them by circumstances beyond their control. Then even now, their minds grew up before their bodies did. Their emotions aged through necessity, not natural development like peers experienced freely. But this is only half the story for people who feel older than their age. Maturity is not a virtue, it is a scar. Behind the calmness is fear, behind the wisdom is pain, behind the independence is abandonment, deep and unhealed. Behind the emotional intelligence is survival. Here are the wounds they hide. 1. The wound of self-silencing, learned too early. They learned early that their needs were inconvenient, so they stopped expressing them, stopped asking, stopped hoping for anything different. Internally they carry the belief, my feelings are my burden alone. This leads to adulthood patterns like keeping struggles secret always, minimizing their emotions, avoiding confrontation, only crying in private, comforting others while they fall apart quietly, unseen, unheard by anyone. They became experts at hiding pain even from themselves. 2. The wound of emotional isolation, feeling forever separate from others. They grew up feeling like no one understood them, and that belief still follows them everywhere they go, every relationship they attempt. Even in a crowd, they feel lone wolf tired, like they're observing a world they don't fully belong to, never did. They often say things like, I feel alone even when I am with people. I can't connect with people my age. No one really knows who I am. It is not a lack of social skills. It is emotional displacement, existential loneliness, no one acknowledges. 3. The wound of over-adaptation. To survive childhood instability, they became adaptable. Too adaptable, they shape-shifted to meet expectations. They had no space to learn who they truly were. Fast forward to adulthood, and they may still struggle with it. Identity confusion, difficulty making decisions, people-pleasing, suppressing their desires, feeling lost. This is the psychological cost of becoming mature early. 4. The wound of never feeling safe. They might be responsible, composed, independent, but a part of them is always scanning. They grew up in unpredictable environments, so unpredictability still triggers them deeply. Their nervous system hasn't learned how to relax completely. Their mind hasn't learned how to trust stability. Their heart hasn't learned how to receive softness without suspicion, without waiting for pain. These wounds age someone internally, making them feel older, wearier, more cautious than their years. But there is something else happening here. People who feel older than their age often attract two types of relationships. 1. People who need saving because they're responsible, patient, mature, self-sacrificing. They naturally become magnets for emotionally unstable people, narcissists, the wounded, the chaotic, the immature who drain them. They unconsciously slip into caretaker roles, not realizing they are recreating their childhood dynamic all over again, endlessly repeating it. Psychologists refer to this as repetition compulsion. Your psyche repeats familiar pain until you recognize and heal it, break the cycle. These relationships drain them emotionally, and reinforce the belief that they are meant to carry others, never themselves, never their own weight. 2. People who feel threatened by their maturity. Some people misinterpret their calm seriousness as arrogance, coldness, aloofness, superiority they resent. In reality, they're simply self-contained. A trait many find uncomfortable because it exposes their own emotional chaos, their own lack. 3. Deep soul connections with older or wiser individuals. They are naturally drawn to older friends, mentors, emotionally mature partners available, thoughtful, grounded people. Why? Because emotional age gravitates toward emotional age, not chronological age. Their true peers are rarely their peers. People who feel older than their age have one deeply rooted belief. I shouldn't need anything, ever, from anyone, for any reason. This belief came from years of self-reliance, and so love becomes complicated. They fear being a burden to anyone who cares. They don't want to add weight to anyone's life, because they know intimately what weight feels like, how it crushes over time. They feel guilty receiving care. Love feels undeserved. Affection feels uncomfortable. Kindness feels suspicious. They struggle to trust softness at all. Soft things rarely lasted in their childhood. Warm moments often came with cold consequences. So in adulthood they want love desperately, but they don't know how to let it actually reach them. They love quietly but intensely. They express care through acts, emotional presence, responsibility, stability, sacrifice. But they rarely say the words out loud, rarely admit they need love too, desperately so. They carry love in their bones, but they rarely expose it to anyone, fearing rejection, fearing it will be used against them. Loneliness hits people who feel older than their age in a special way. It isn't about lacking friends or being alone physically. It is about feeling emotionally out of sync, craving depth in a shallow world, being hyper-aware in a world that avoids self-reflection constantly, wanting conversations that are rare, longing for connection that feels real, being tired of pretending you are okay when you are not, ever, feeling like you've lived too much too soon. They grow up used to carrying their inner world alone, always carrying everything alone, so they never learned how to let someone inside it. And so the loneliness becomes chronic, a quiet ache following them everywhere. There are two versions of people who feel older than their age. One, the outer self, calm, grounded, logical, dependable always, emotionally stable, always fine, always strong, always the one holding things together for everyone else, never themselves, never their needs met. Two, the inner self, tired, overwhelmed, soft, sensitive, yearning for peace, craving rest, carrying memories they never processed fully, never healed, walking with wounds that never had space to heal. They built the outer self to survive, but the inner self exists. This is the part people don't see inside. Every prematurely aged adult is a child who had to disappear too soon. A child who wanted comfort but became the comforter. Wanted guidance but became the guide. Wanted protecting but became the protector. Wanted love but became the giver of it. Wanted to play but had responsibilities. Wanted to be seen but became invisible. This inner child didn't disappear. They simply went underground, and they carry feelings that never went away, never got resolved properly. Fear, longing, confusion, unmet needs, sadness, resentment, unexpressed anger. These feelings make someone feel emotionally older because carrying them is aging. Healing begins when the adult finally meets the child within and says the words they needed decades ago. Words nobody ever said. You are safe now. You don't have to carry this alone. I see you. You deserved better. But here is something most people miss. People who feel older than their age rarely recognize their strengths. But their premature maturity gave them unique gifts nobody else possesses. One, extraordinary emotional intelligence. They can read people with unsettling accuracy. They feel energy shifts instantly. They understand unspoken emotions clearly. Two, deep empathy. Not the superficial kind. The kind forged from knowing suffering firsthand, from living through it, surviving it somehow. Three, calmness in chaos. While others panic, they navigate crisis with clarity and composure, because chaos is familiar to them, almost comforting. Four, independence. They don't rely on others to function. They know how to survive alone, how to exist without needing anyone. Five, resilience. Life has already tested them, and they survived. These strengths make them powerful, but they came with painful origins. It is not about age, it is about emotional mileage. They've lived through more responsibility, loss, pressure, trauma, emotional labor, unpredictability than most. Survival than most people their age. Imagine a car. One may be 5 years old but rarely driven, barely used at all. Another might be the same age, but has traveled across mountains, storms, deserts, endured harsh conditions relentlessly, without rest ever given. Which one feels older? The same principle applies psychologically. People who feel older than their age simply have more mileage on them. Healing doesn't mean becoming childish. It means reclaiming the parts of yourself that never got to grow naturally freely, without survival pressure. Here's where the journey begins. 1. Learning to receive instead of always giving to everyone else. Never yourself, never your needs. Letting others support you, even when it feels uncomfortable. 2. Allowing yourself to rest without guilt crushing you every time you do. Your body isn't a machine. Your mind isn't a tool. 3. Reconnecting with suppressed emotions buried deep inside you for decades now. The anger you swallowed, the sadness you hid, the needs you silenced. They're still inside you waiting to be acknowledged, released. 4. Saying no, without explaining yourself endlessly to everyone who demands more from you. Always more, never enough given already. Boundary setting does not make you selfish, it makes you human. 5. Relearning play, laughter, joy. Not as distractions from reality, But as medicine 6, letting go of roles you were forced into, caregiver, therapist, peacemaker, problem solver, you were a child, playing an adult's job. It is okay to put that job down. 7. Surrounding yourself with emotionally mature people who meet you, people who don't drain you, people who don't take advantage of your strength, people who meet you halfway, who give back. Healing doesn't make you less mature. It makes you whole. If you feel older than your age, this is not your fault. You didn't fail at being young. You didn't grow up too fast by choice. You were forced to grow up by circumstances. You learned adulthood before you ever learned safety. You learned responsibility before joy. You learned emotional labor before emotional expression before freedom. Nothing about your past was normal. But everything about your reactions is. Your maturity was not a gift given freely, chosen willingly. It was armor. And now that you are older, you are allowed to take some of that armor off. Slowly, carefully, gently. At your own pace. You are allowed to rest, to soften, to breathe. And above all, you are allowed freedom now. You are allowed to feel young again. Not childish, not irresponsible, just balanced. You are not running out of time ever, truly. You are reclaiming the years you lost. People who feel older than their age live life with a kind of gravity few can understand. But beneath that gravity is a softness that was never allowed to exist. Never allowed to breathe freely ever. A hope that was never allowed to shine. A youth that was never allowed to unfold. This isn't here to diagnose. It is here to tell you something simple. Your story makes sense. Your feelings make sense. Your heaviness makes sense completely, deeply. Your maturity makes sense. You are not broken. You are not outdated. You are not too serious for this world, ever. You are simply someone who has lived more life than your years suggest. And now you deserve to live differently. The life that was kept from you. The life with safety, rest, emotional connection, softness, support, freedom, peace. You've never known. The life where maturity is a choice, not a burden. But here's the question I want to leave you with today. What part of yourself have you been carrying for too long? And what would it feel like to finally put it down?